This is the intersection where the two forbidden subjects of politics and religion meet. This is the Sophie Scholl Roundtable, and with me again is Kurt Olson. I'm Mel McGinnis, and we love talking politics, especially as it relates to Scripture. Last time we were together, we looked at Exodus 18, verse 21, and saw those four primary characteristics, basic characteristics, that every candidate running for office ought to be scrutinized over. And capable men, fear God, trustworthy, and are opposed to dishonest gain. We talked about matters relating to our own special election here in our area. But I want to continue on with what Kurt and I were just talking off camera regarding our governor's race. And as much as people are talking about economy and inflation, right, you see something different that could powerfully affect the outcome of the governor's race.
Yeah, so it's not breaking news to the average resident of Western New York that New York City has a lot of weight just by population and all that. And just in the last week, we've had a crime happen at a bodega in whatever, I don't know what the borough was, but a crime happened. So there was a dispute between the bodega owner and a guy who, over a bag of potato chips of all things. Seriously, people. So anyways, the guy who wanted the chips didn't like what was happening. He goes in back of the counter, threatens the owner. The guy, like any good bodega owner would have, he had a weapon. Mm-hmm. He defends himself, his property, and shoots the guy dead. Now, we've had other cases in the past. I remember the guy that, what was his name? Oh, Bernie, the guy on the subway.
Yeah.
Bernie, that's the one that's immediately coming to my head. He defended himself, and he did not face a murder charge. He fell under the self-defense issue. And so there is this thing that's happened in New York City in the last week. And Lee Zeldin, now the GOP nominee for governor, is going after Hochul on this. See, he sees red meat. And this thing is, she's vulnerable here. Mm-hmm. And he's going after this strong. You know, there's been a number of press conferences he's had, and to a point where Hochul had to defend herself earlier this week. And here's the thing that's going on with her. She wants to please the left. The left brought her power with Cuomo. She knows that they butter her bread. And not to mention the fact that she just accepted the Working Families Party designation just last week, and one of their platforms is defund the police. Okay? So that's going on with her. This crime happens. It has the attention of the New York City media. The GOP candidate for governor, or nominee for governor, is now going after it. And I think there is a very real possibility that because of the increasing crime rate that's already been reported in New York City, that, and with the weight and the power that New York City does have just in terms of votes and electorate and all that, this election could be decided on that very issue. And the question Democrats are going to have to ask themselves, how many of those store owners, other residents of New York that have reached their breaking point with what's going on, how many of them are going to listen to the guy who wants to bring law and order back to not just the city but the state? That's going to be an important question, and where that divides, I'm unwilling to take the bet that all those people are just going to jump on the Hochul train when they see this going on.
I totally agree. It's interesting you bring up that episode with Bernie. I'm trying to remember his last name too, but that got such national attention.
It did.
And I feel like this one is as well, and people see the common sense of defending yourself on video.
Exactly.
It's all on video.
And the incident that happened, when was that? Back in the 80s? We didn't, unless there was closed circuit TV cameras, we didn't have that ability. It was the word of witnesses and the guy against others. Now we have video, closed circuit TV cameras that has a business owner being attacked. Mind you, something stupid, potato chips. Seriously. But the guy's threatened. He defends his property, his life, his business, perhaps another employee.
Yeah.
And the district attorney that Lee Zeldin has promised on day one he intends to fire is charging that bodega owner with murder.
Yeah.
Now, prediction, if Lee Zeldin wins, Alvin Bragg will cut loose. He will not sit there to be fired by the sitting governor. It won't happen. I just don't see that happening. But anyways, it's an issue.
Yeah, and I think another issue that follows up on that is with this recent gun legislation that has been passed in our state government, which was done by surprise. Because Andy Goodell was speaking to the Tea Party and saying, I'm going there Thursday, and I don't know what's in this legislation. So it wasn't out in public. He couldn't see it. And now we find what's in it.
In fact, I saw on social media where there were several members of the Senate and the Assembly who were sending out tweets, sitting there in Albany. And supposedly there's this momentous stuff we're supposed to be dealing with. And this happens all the time. We see this. We have had members of Congress criticize the leadership, the Republicans and the Democrats in D.C. on this, where a few people are meeting behind closed doors. Their brilliance, their infinite brilliance, comes up with some 2,000-page monster, and they have 3 hours to read it.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not a financial thing. It's an ability in setting the stage for this. This only happened because the Supreme Court rejected the prior law in New York that had been rejected by the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And of course, the left can't have that.
No.
So they impose their will another way, or at least they think they can.
Yeah.
My guess, this thing lands before the Supreme Court as well, and they're going to say, "Hello, stop it."
Yeah. Right. I feel like it's going to go right back to the Supreme Court, and I think justifiably so.
And there are groups that are already lining up to do so.
Yeah, because as I understand it, when certain businesses, even churches, have to post signs that we defend ourselves.
Here's what they did in New York City, or in Albany, when they passed that emergency piece of legislation. They basically made several businesses gun-free zones. It's basically a walking advertisement. Come and hurt anyone here that you want. And I have lived in multiple states, including Texas and South Carolina. I know for a fact multiple people packed heat every Sunday. And this comes at a time when we've had churches where there have been acts of violence. Even not so recently as a church out in California with a guy having issue with something going on. Seriously.
Yeah.
How many times do good people with weapons stop bad guys? It happens far more often than anyone wants because the media doesn't cover it.
Yes, correct. the media doesn't cover it. They just are very selective in what they want you to see, and they would rather have people see the, quote, gun violence and the way in which they term it as well.
Right.
They don't term it criminal violence.
No.
Gun violence.
Right. This gets to these funny things where, guns are obviously shooting by themselves rather than having the motive of a human being behind a trigger. But and you get these analogies of we might as well outlaw cars and other things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You have a right to own and bear arms. You don't necessarily have a right to drive. You've got to purchase insurance.
Mm-hmm. You have to pass a test.
Yes.
You have to prove to an instructor that you know how to manage a vehicle. Mm-hmm. And just like millions of gun owners across America have actually gone to a shooting range and have taken a class. And in fact, let's be honest, a lot of Americans, especially out in rural America, grew up with their dad or grandfather teaching them how to shoot a weapon.
Yep. Right.
It's realistic. That's a thing. Mm-hmm. Why? Because there's deer, there's other things that people will kill for the purpose of having this crazy thing called meat in the middle of winter.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to cut this conversation off right here. There's one other subject I'd love to deal with regarding Kurt. It has to do with a vibe that's giving off when you hear about men giving birth to babies. Next show, come and join us on the Sophie Scholl Roundtable.
Yes,